Welcome to the Simply Real Life podcast. I'm Sarah, the founder of Simply Real Health, here to help you simplify, amplify, and elevate your life. This show is for those of you who want the real talk on how to live a more intuitive and intentional life, a life that's healthy from the inside out, and one that feels more effortless, aligned, simple, and more alive. We cover it all, from health, wellness, mindset, motherhood, daily habits and rituals, to business and relationships, creativity and growth, and tiny tricks to feeling your best, and the energetics behind it all filled with personal stories, unfiltered conversations, and of course, answering all of your burning questions, all in the way of simplicity and keeping it real, so that you can create your own version of your healthiest life. Let's do it. Hi, you guys. Welcome back to the show. I hope that you are having a great week. I want to jump right in because we have to address something here. And it's this question that I get that comes in varying forms. Some of it sometimes is a little bit accusatory. Some of it is just a little curious. Some of it is really perplexed. So here's the question. The question that came in was, how do you create or cultivate a more positive mentality in your life? How do you walk through your day with a mindset that seems from the outside very positive all the time, that nothing ever gets you down? How do you do that? And I love this question for a number of reasons. One is that in the way that she asked the question, she's assuming that there has been some sort of alchemy or magic that has happened for me to be able to do that, assuming that it doesn't just happen on its own. And sometimes the more accusatory questions are, is that real? Don't you feel anything? Or are you just always happy all the time? And I always like to say, I feel all the things. Trust me, I feel all kinds of emotions. It's a big thing sometimes for me to get through the day without taking on so many other people's energies. So believe me when I say that this for me has been absolutely a learned practice and is absolutely something that I have actively cultivated in my life. And I am not saying that I am perfect. I don't think you guys think that. But I will say, for the most part, the way that I walk through my daily life is oriented in a more positive mindset. But it's not that I look at things and I'm just happy all the time, because I'm not. It's more that I can see stuff happening, and I've come up, I guess, with a way to remove myself from those inner thoughts in my head and rise above it and try to look at the scenario or the situation or the emotion and really start to ask myself, is that actually true? Or is that something that I'm making it up in my own head? Let's start from the beginning here, because this question I feel is so nuanced and multifaceted. It's not just about seeing something and being, well, I'm just going to see the positive side of things. I'm always going to look on the bright side. I'm always going to find the happy thing about it. I think there's maybe a tiny element of that, but I think more than that, it's about understanding first how we are naturally wired. Our brains are naturally wired towards fear, and they're naturally wired to protect us. If you think about thousands of years ago, just like how we were created to be in the world, was that there was a lot to be protected from, whether that was animals or other humans or other forces of nature or other things that we were constantly having to be on the lookout in terms of protection. If we did not do that, we did not live or survive. So you can see that as a species, the way that we have evolved, our brains are still very much wired that way naturally. And so understanding that means that there's nothing wrong with you if you wake up in the morning and your first thought is a negative feeling, an emotion, scanning for fear, thinking of something to be anxious about, looking for the bear that's coming at you. That is very much a normal response, and how I would say most of us probably wake up thinking. Let's just normalize that for a second, that there are a lot of things that get flooded into our brain every single day, millions of thoughts. And how our brains are wired, so many of those voices and thoughts are going to be deeply rooted in fear and looking for the negative thing. So if you know that, it becomes a little bit easier to disconnect your mind and your thoughts from your reality. Your thoughts are not always the reality. They're not always what is actually true. And I tell this to a lot of my clients. Sometimes have to check yourself. Is that 100% a factual truth? Or is that a story I'm telling myself? Is that me being afraid? Is that coming from a fearful point of view? Is that coming from anticipating things going the worst possible way? Knowing all of that is very normal. Then you get the choice to check yourself. Is that actually true? Is that something that I know for sure is going to go down like that? Or am I just telling this story in my head? Which then starts off this cascade of your body is flooded with cortisol and all this stress on your adrenals and all these emotions. And you just start out the day with this intensity that may not be actually true, but we believe every thought that comes in our mind. And until you can learn to disconnect that a little bit, it becomes very hard. It feels like you are being pulled and led in certain directions by fear or by the worst case scenario or things to always be on the lookout or afraid of. So I think learning that and understanding that of, okay, that's the way we're wired. And then we have a choice. Do I want to continue to believe that? Or is there another possible way, another possible route, another possible thought that I could choose to cling on to and ride that into my day versus letting the negativity clearly just take its path and it's knocking down everything in sight. When it comes to creating a little bit more of a positive mentality, I think it takes millions of times just practicing, maybe first of all, just even noticing the thoughts that are running through your head. And don't feel down on yourself if what you're starting to notice is, wow, it's really negative up there. Sometimes I like to think about it, it's almost a separate person just living up there, just spouting off things and doing whatever it wants. And it's my job to rein that in. And you don't get to just control and dictate up there. I'm going to take a little bit more of an active role here in shaping what I'm choosing to believe. But I think it does have to start with being aware, first of all, of what those thoughts are. And sometimes these are just deeply rooted in our beliefs, maybe even from childhood or the people around us, like the older adults in our lives when we were little, about how they used to think and maybe how they used to say or how they used to react to things can sometimes be things that are passed down and we don't even know or notice them. Or it could be that you experienced something in your life and maybe it didn't go the best, but then you internalize that therefore for the rest of your life, it's always going to go the worst possible way. So there could be a lot wrapped up in that conversation, but I think just being able to notice and recognize what's going on. Just don't judge yourself at first. And then you can think to yourself, what would a more productive or a higher vibrational way to think about this would be? And just reaching for a more positive thought or a more open-ended thought. We just want to get away from the complete negative side of things and just test it out. How does that feel? If the way that my brain was saying was, oh, well, this could go great just as much as it could go bad. You know, it's kind of 50-50. So therefore, me creating this whole scenario or story about it and I'm all wrapped up in it first thing in the morning is going to lead you to a very different place than if you are able to, okay, this thought, interesting. Why are all my thoughts wired that way? It's very normal. And then starting to think, what would be a better thought if I got to choose? So that's the mentality part of things, what is going on inside your brain. I also think that there's a second part to this, which is when things happen externally in our lives or to us or circumstances that we can't control. I think that is also a part of this conversation of how do you react and how do you orient yourself around something like that. So let's say that you got some news and you were hoping for one outcome and it was something different, or you really wanted to take part in something but you didn't get the chance or the opportunity, or something that you were hopeful or wanting or desiring and it didn't come through. In that situation, I think it's about how our minds react to that situation. I think there's either two choices. One is that you take it as things happening to you. It's a little bit more of that victim mentality. Things happen to you. You have no control. Why do all these things happen all the time? You're just unlucky. It's your fault. It's the way things are for you. And that creates really strong beliefs that are wired in your brain around things never work out for me, or I never get the things that I want, or of course that would happen to me. All of those talk tracks that circulate in our mind really do create the sense of what we believe to be true. And our beliefs have such a deep impact on how we see the world and how we move through the world. So because beliefs are created by the thoughts that we think, it's just really interesting to start noticing how the two are connected. So let's say something does happen to you and you're like, oh, that's kind of a bummer, or shoot, that's not what I was hoping for. I wanted the outcome to be a little bit different. One of the things that helps me just reorient almost right in that moment is, how is this happening for a reason? And I guess maybe even believing that to begin with, that things are lined up for you, that you have this belief in God or a higher power. You have this faith, and that you are always being led and guided in your life. And for some of you, that may sound so far off from the way that you operate now, but starting to even work on that, what would that look like for you to feel that deep sense of faith or trust in that you know that you are always being led to the next thing that there is for you to learn, or the next opportunity, or these little breadcrumbs that are laid out for you to follow. And so I think having that bigger picture mentality of, how is this happening for a reason, or believing that it must be for a reason, because if it's not this, it's something better. And I forget where I first heard that, but I feel like that phrase has changed my life. And if you know who the original person who said that or came up with that thought, please let me know so I can cite them, because it is one of the most massively transformational ways to look at things. If it's not this, it's because that there's something better, and truly believing in that. Our beliefs create our reality and how we experience things and how we see things and how we interpret them. So if it's not this, it's because there's something better. Leaves you in a state of, you're okay, no problem. If it's not this, it's something better. And really believing in that you are worthy of the things that you desire. Otherwise, why would they be desires on your heart? And that comes back to your faith and your trust and the way that you feel you are being led or guided through your life or not. And maybe that feels like it might be one of the missing pieces in terms of a more negative or fearful mentality with your life. But that's one of the things I think that has truly helped me, is that belief and that trust. And if it's not for this, it's because there's something better. And that usually ends up being the case, I will just say. The second thing that really helps me reorient in that moment is, what is this here to show me or to teach me? I am just a big believer that we are constantly being given the lessons that we need to learn next. Nobody comes to planet Earth and knows everything and is so wise. Everybody is here to learn and grow through some stuff along the way. I really do believe that. And it's very individual, and learning and growing is not always easy, and it doesn't always feel smooth, and it doesn't always feel like this effortless thing. Sometimes we need to be hit over the head with the same lesson over and over again until we actually start to pay attention. I have found this practice of just asking myself, what is this here to teach me or show me? Because when you're able to look at less than ideal situations like that, you can usually pick up some patterns. If you're like, this is here to teach me or show me this lesson that I just can't seem to learn, it just keeps popping up and coming up in all these different circumstances. It's this kind of awakening call. Something's trying to get your attention here, and you're either not listening, or you're numbing out, or you're tuning out, or you're avoiding, or you're just not wanting to address that thing. But usually it ends up being that thing is the biggest opening point. That once you crack and break through, the other side feels so much lighter and so much easier and so much more aligned with your actual true self and how you feel your best. And it's almost like an energetic conversation here. So this is something that's so helpful. What is this here to show me or to teach me? And if it seems to be a lesson that keeps coming up, it does, I think, require a little bit of self-reflection of, okay, I realize this is going to continue to keep coming up. And usually I feel like it gets a little bit worse and worse. The repercussions are more and more each time that happens. And so I'm just always a fan of, I want to learn the lesson as quick as possible. Let me try to integrate this right now. Why am I feeling this way? What was I hoping for? What did I assume that meant? What's the story that I'm telling myself about this? There's so much, I think, that's deeply and intricately connected in that way. But this just requires a lot of honesty with yourself. Deep, true honesty and being a little vulnerable. What do I think is actually going on here? The third thing that I feel is also helpful is knowing that in any moment you can choose again. Knowing that if your brain, let's say all of our brains are wired for fear and protection and survival, knowing that not everything that you feel afraid of, especially stuff that's in your head, especially a mental chatter, or you're not good enough for that, or who do you think you are to do that, or a lot of that low grade thinking that we end up then believing ends up impacting the choices we make and how we do things and how we show up in our lives. But knowing that how you grow the most is by seeing that fear. You see it, you recognize it, you feel it, but then you're able to do it anyways and move forward. And I'm talking about, this is not like fear of actual true physical things. That is a fear. I'm talking about the obstacles that we put up in our own minds, or reasons why we can't do the things that we do feel a desire for or do feel a call for. A lot of times jealousy can even be the biggest and most helpful indicator of something that you actually deeply desire and crave in your life, but you're blocking yourself from it. Usually because of thoughts in your head of why it can't work for you, why you're not good enough, why it won't work for you, why their situation is different. That can be such a helpful indicator. If I ever feel jealousy, that's showing me something that I really want. Sometimes that's a surprise to me. I didn't realize how much I actually did desire that thing or get kind of excited by it now. But starting to learn to lead more with love and faith in your life than fear. And fear's there for a reason. It's great. You probably know when it's an actual true thing to be afraid of, or if it's something that you're making up in your mind, or if it's just the way that your brain's naturally wired through more of a lens of love or curiosity, or that's interesting, or something to think about, or neutral, versus assuming things always going the worst. With all of these things, I will say it's not just a one-time switch and then you're done, and then your brain is just more oriented in a nice, happy, more positive way that's looking for growth and not seeing themselves as this victim. I will tell you that it requires so much of a daily reset with yourself, a daily honest look at yourself and the thoughts that you're thinking, because we are so hardwired to operate in that fearful space that I have found, at least, that it takes a constant checking in with yourself, a constant refresh, almost to the point of every day, at some point during the day, I'm needing to check myself and being, is that actually what I want to be running the show? What's going on up there? No, thank you. Let's think about this in a different way. So that can look a lot of different ways. For some people, that's where they find meditation really helpful, is because you're reaching for those higher thoughts and that higher vibration, that higher way of seeing things, getting out of the victim mentality, out of this is happening to me, and more how this is happening for me. And how could I see that? And what can I learn from that? It requires getting out of your own way, out of your own head, above it all, essentially. For some people, it can be really helpful to journal, because it's almost like a stream of consciousness. You're writing down these thoughts, and then you start to notice maybe how negative they are, or how crazy they are, or how you're like, wow, is that really what's going through my head? It helps you kind of vet things a little bit better when you see it on paper. Oh, there's an easy solution. Or what if I switch the lens that I'm looking this through, and how could I see this with more love? How could I see this as something helpful? How could I see this as something guiding me or leading me? And so I just think that that's also a very necessary piece in this, is the constant refreshing and reminders that we all need. It's a daily setting of your mind. Get your mind right. Get your mind set. Knowing how we're naturally wired, and then knowing the difference between how you actually want to be thinking and feeling and moving through your day can be two wildly different things. This is why for me, I find it so helpful to have some moment of quiet time in the morning. And usually for me, it's before my kids get up, but it could be at any point in the day. It doesn't have to be morning, but at some point you have that check-in with yourself, that how we doing today? What's going on up there? What are the things that are happening? And sometimes we need to sort through some stuff. I would say it's pretty rare that you would just wake up and it's all happy and here we go and let's go and let's do this day. I mean, at least not for me. So it has been a practice, something that is not perfect, something that I require a lot of reminders with, and I need constant refreshers on. So I hope that this gives you some hope, that this gives you maybe some ideas and even understanding what's really going on, that you don't need to identify with every thought that comes through your mind. In fact, I would not recommend it, especially if you want to live a life that is healthy in all senses of the word. Healthy physically, mentally, emotionally. This is learning how to work out your mind. We do our bodies. It's learning that give and take and what's going on here and how can we strengthen this connection and how can we make this connection better and how can we make this more productive and helpful, because we know that it has such a deep impact on how we show up and the way that we are and the way we move through our day and our interactions with the people that we love. And it's just so connected, but it's such an internal game. And I feel like because it's internal, not a lot of people talk about it or normalize it. I wish this was one of the things that we learned in school, how much and how deeply our thoughts affect everything. And so learning to work that out and strengthening that relationship between you and your thoughts and your mental game and your mindset. And it just affects everything so deeply. So no, I am not a Pollyanna. I do not automatically just think life is all sunshine and hearts and rainbows. But for the most part, because I'm able to catch myself and really be aware of what's going on for the most part, and then change it in a way of how I want things to be. If I think I am in charge of creating, crafting, designing my life, how would I want it to be? How would I want to be thinking? And going for those thoughts, even if it feels really foreign or uncomfortable at first. But over time, your brain starts to believe it. And when your brain believes it, your body believes it. When your body believes it, it changes so much about everything in your day. I hope that that answered your question and that this was helpful. And if you have any other questions about this, let me know. This has been, decades in the making for me. I first started learning or becoming aware of this when I was out of college, so young 20s. And I absolutely think that it has been such a huge part of me being able to create a life that feels so good to me and so aligned and so true, not steeped in fear, seeing and recognizing fear and getting more comfortable with that and then moving through it. There's been so many instances of that in my life, but really even down to the nitty-gritty of daily things or seeing something and then having that pause before and reacting to it. It just makes the world of difference. So I hope that this was just helpful to hear and just think about in your own life and start to notice, where are they falling in the line of positive, helpful, forward-thinking, growth-minded, or is it victim mentality, things happen to me, not again, negativity, fear? Just start to notice. And making these shifts, you can do it in tiny ways, in tiny moments, and that's what adds up over time to such a different way of operating. Thank you for always asking the best questions and for being curious about thinking and feeling and operating a little bit differently with this intention behind it of really wanting to create a life that does feel healthy, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you back here next week. If you enjoyed this episode and want more like it, make sure you're subscribed to the Simply Real Life podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and maybe share it with a friend or two. That would mean the world.